Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve Too. Today we have Dr. Carnell Hall with us. So she was actually in the Marines. She, I think, is one of my first Marines to be on the podcast. She served for 8.5 years. She's a multifaceted professional. She established herself as a consultant, a pastor, a counselor, and a higher education professional. She has extensive teaching experience, and she also has a 24-year dedication to health information management. So she's super diverse. She has an associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate. And she's also super well educated. So, Dr. Hall, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I like to start with the women kind of talking about their military experience, why they joined, and then just kind of go from there.
Okay. So for me, the Marine Corps was not my first career path. I actually was enrolled to at FSU. I was going to be a nurse, and I had no idea what the military was all about. Like all high school students, I took the ASVAB, and all of a sudden, I was getting called down to the guidance counselor's office. And there were all these recruiters talking to me about enrolling in the military. And of course, I was shocked, bewildered, and had no idea what they were talking about. So when I came home, started talking to my parents about it, my father was immediately saying, no, my daughter is not going to the military, let alone going to the Marine Corps. But when I spoke to the Marine Corps recruiter, he was like, you can go to the Marine Corps, you get to see the world, and you also can complete your education, because that was my first priority. I wanted to ensure that I would still be able to get my college education. And also, it sounded good to be able to see the world, because I had been raised in a very strict household. I went to school, I went home, I went to church, and that was basically my upbringing. So I hadn't had any opportunity to really explore outside those boundaries. And it sounded like a great opportunity, but the biggest hurdle was getting past my father. So my mom tried talking to him. I tried talking to him. The recruiters tried talking to him. And my father was like, no, my daughter is not going to the military. I have plans for her life, and it doesn't include the military. The only reason why I was able to get my father to finally agree was, I was like, Dad, I'll be 18, and, in June, I'll be able to sign myself up. And, cause still had to keep talking, but he finally gave in. So I ended up going in the Marine Corps under the delayed entry program. So I actually signed up in 1979, but I didn't leave until 1980. And my father was a very strict disciplinarian. So, I was used to having to face a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, and overcoming things, because he always told us, anything you attempt, I expect you to overcome. My grades, I had excellent grades. Hard work was something that all of my siblings, we were used to. So working hard was not something that was new to me. But my recruiter, he was like, we're going to be prepared for boot camp, because Marine Corps boot camp is not easy. So he would come and we would go out and do physical fitness training. And so I thought I was prepared. But when it came time to go to Paris Island, when I got there, that was a whole nother shock, that I was totally not prepared for it. I was like, oh my God, what kind of nightmare have I gotten myself into? And I will say it was a struggle. The academics was not hard. The PT itself that wasn't hard because, I was in good shape. And so I did not really struggle with that. I think for me, what I struggled with was the mental aspect of boot camp. And then I met a friend there. Her last name was Hall, and they kept getting us confused. So they would be talking to Hill, but they would be looking at Hall, which was me, and so they kept getting us confused. My every 10 days we would get evaluations, and it would say private has no military bearing. Private needs to stop talking. I was like, oh Lord, so I had a conversation with my DI one night as we drew closer to graduation. And I asked her if there was any concern about me completing boot camp. And she was like, you're not necessarily in jeopardy of failing, but if you want to get through boot camp, if you really want to be a Marine, I needed to separate myself from, my friends. I needed to buckle down. I need to get more serious. And so I thought about that. And I think the biggest thing for me was I could not see myself going back home, telling my dad that I had failed boot camp. I think I was more afraid of that than I was of actually failing boot camp. So, I was acing everything, but I knew I needed to make an attitude adjustment. And so that's what I did. I was like, okay, I can't keep hanging with my friend Hill as much as I like her. This is not going to work. So I did that. So when graduation came, my parents came, and, just to see the look on my dad's face made me know that I had made the right decision. And so I left boot camp, I graduated, went home, had a week off, and went to school. And in school, that's where we get our MOS, and we get to choose what duty station we want to go to based on where we end up in our class. Meaning, if you want your choice of duty station, then you need to finish in the top of your class. And I wanted to go to California because, of course, I'd only been in my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, and I wanted to go to California. So again, I was going to have to work really hard. And so that's what I did, And so at the end of my class, I was tops in my class. So I had the first pick of duty stations, and I chose to go to Camp Pendleton. California was another big eye opening because now I have no curfews. As long as I show up for PT in the morning, work till 4:30, all my time is mine. And I thought I had won the lottery. So, of course, I was homesick. I missed my family, but it was an experience. And my first 4 ranks were meritoriously because when I graduated from boot camp, I automatically had a stripe. Was I graduated and I was automatically promoted to PFC. So I was a meritorious Lance Corporal, meritorious Corporal, and it was ready to promote me to a meritorious Sergeant. I was like, wait, this is all new. I don't think I'm ready to be a sergeant because that was a lot of responsibility for someone that is as young as me. I was 18, 19, and so I felt like I needed some more time to grow, understand what the Marine Corps was all about. And so that I wanted to take my time to do that. But I think what really became a shock for me was the discrimination, the sexual harassment, because we all wore the same uniform. We all had similar jobs, but women in the military are not always treated the same. I think men resent us because it's like, why are you in my man's military? Definitely, why are you in my man's Marine Corps? Because the Marine Corps is a tight unit, and they're first to fight, first on ground. And it is even worse because it is definitely hard to get through Marine Corps boot camp. It is one of the more prestigious branches of the military. So most women do not pass Marine Corps boot camp, and when they do, they are they're hardcore. And so when they see someone like me in the military, they first of all they want to know how you made it through boot camp. And so that was definitely a shock to the system. So I was dealing with a lot of extra stress, a lot of extra pressure, a lot of unwanted attention, which made some of the things that I experienced made my job harder. And it was definitely challenging because like I say, I was brought up in a sheltered environment. So I was not equipped to deal with some of that. And my family was 3,000 miles away from home. Whereas I really enjoyed my time in the service, I wasn't prepared for a lot of things that happened. And so during my time in the military, I did experience military sexual trauma, and it came from the most unlikely place I could imagine, which was from a friend of mine who I felt we were as close as brother and sister. So that was definitely a shock to the system for me. And it took me a lot of years to recover from that because I knew his family, I knew his wife, I knew his daughter. I spent a lot of time in his home. And so I was not prepared for that to happen. And the week after it happened, my oldest brother slipped into a coma and died. So I wasn't able to share that experience with my family. So I essentially had to go through that experience by myself, which made it twice as hard to deal with. And it took me a long time to be able to talk about it, to come to a place where I could report it. It still there's still lingering scars, and I had to figure out, what am I going to do about this, and how can my experience help somebody else to deal with this situation if it happened to them. Because a lot of times when you are assaulted, you blame yourself, because I definitely did. I was suicidal at one point in the initial early days because I've been assaulted. I just lost my brother who was my hero. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get through this. Now what? And I think only because of how my parents raised me and my faith, the strength of my faith is the only thing that saved me from that situation. And so what I wanted women to understand, or anybody that something like this happens, is that you are not defined by what happens to you. You can rise above that. And so when I got out of the military, the first thing I want to do is finish my degree, because that was my whole purpose for going into the military. So I finished my first degree 19 years after I graduated from high school. So through my military career, getting out, going through the assault, it took me 19 years. But I always believe in finishing what I started, because that's what my parents taught me. So through dealing with the assault, dealing with the anxiety, depression, the falling down and the getting up, I finished my first degree and I went on to get my bachelor's, dual master's, and my doctorate. And so I'm still dealing with the after effects of what happened to me in the military. And the biggest thing I think that prevented me from initially reporting what happened to me is the stigma, because I had already been through discrimination. I had already been through sexual harassment, had already been through the abuse. And so something like that happened. I didn't think nobody was going to believe that it was not my fault. So my whole thing was, how can I help somebody else have a better outcome than me? And so I created a nonprofit called Operation Two Hearts and Minds. And through that, I wanted other women to not be a victim, but be victorious and understand that you don't have to be defined by what happened to you, that you can overcome this and you can have a brighter future. You can have a fresh start, and that there are things that, tools and resources out there to help you not commit suicide, not lose sight of who you are, and to be able to recover and move forward.
So, you said you came in the 1980s. So how was, you know, so that was about what, 40-ish years ago. Like, what were the tools back then where I know you said that, because you were dealing with, the harassment and the discrimination, like you didn't feel like comfortable talking to your leadership. Was there any other resources at that time? Or you just kind of almost had to suck it up and keep going?
Yeah, we didn't really have the tools that are available today. Um, that's basically it. I mean, because you got to think back then, women, even though women had their pick, and when I say they had their pick, it was like there were probably 10 men to every one female. So we were outnumbered. And a lot of people thought, oh, this is just great. You should never be dateless. But on the negative, if you had a complaint, it was like, suck it up, deal with it, get over it, keep moving. You know what I'm saying? So if you had to go make a complaint, who you thought you was gonna be talking to? A man. So how much help do you think you are going to be getting when you're sitting in the office saying, Sergeant Major, Staff Sergeant, gutted, so and so is harassing me, so and so assaulted me, and they looking at you like, really? You got to pick of 10 men in here and they harass. Go back to work, Corporal, Lance Corporal. So do you really feel comfortable going? Because then they're going to be asking you, well, what did they do? Well, how did it feel? And you sit there saying, are we really having this conversation? So that was not the environment to be complaining, because I remember I had an incident, and I was upstairs, working upstairs, and somebody I used to work with came in after me and was sexually harassing me. They moved me downstairs. I was there before they were. And they were harassing me, but they moved me downstairs. So you dealing with situations that occur like that. Women often feel like they don't have a leg to stand on. They're not going to get the support that they need. Or when you complain, you can lose a strike. You could get rolled up. You get put out. So the benefits are not there. It's easier just to keep your mouth shut and keep it moving, because you get the repercussions. The men are not getting the repercussions because you're dealing with the good old boys club. I eventually ended up getting out of the Marine Corps because the combat boots messed my feet up. So one day I went to a basketball game that my husband was playing in outside of working hours. And at that time, I had had 2 surgeries on my feet, and I was on med board review. And so I could wear, like the baby doll type shoes with like a 1-inch heel. And I had on a baby doll type shoe with a less than a 1-inch heel on my feet. So when I came back to work the next day, Sergeant Major had called me in his office and he wrote me up. He said I was out of regulation. And I was like, excuse me, what? I said I wasn't even on duty. He was like, "You're a Marine 24 hours a day." I was like, I get that, but I was on my own free time. I was in civilian clothes, and the shoes I had on my feet were in regulation to what the doctor said I could wear. He wrote me up just for spite. So that's the kind of stuff that you would be dealing with because they were mad because I couldn't go to formation could for inspections. They would have to inspect me inside the office because I couldn't stand in formation. I couldn't PT. They couldn't send me to the desert or anything like that. So because of all that, he had to find a way to penalize me. So that was his way. So you found yourself dealing with stuff like that. And I just like I can't keep doing this. I was on maternity. I was in the hospital because I had a high risk pregnancy. So I was in the hospital in Pensacola, Florida, and my husband was in North Cal. No, I was in Biloxi, Mississippi. Wait, we were stationed in North Carolina. No, we were stationed in Louisiana, and I was in what state was I in? Oh, it's been so long ago. I was in Pensacola, and my husband was in New Orleans. My duty station was trying to write me up. They were trying to figure out how to write me up and put me out of the military while I was on hospital fighting for my life and my baby's life. And the only reason why they couldn't do it is because my husband was in admin and he knew what was happening. But if he wouldn't have been in admin, they would have been railroading me out of the military. Women back then, it wasn't a lot, that we could do. And it wasn't a lot of ways we could protect ourselves, but it was stuff like that that was going on all the time. Or men would just be sleeping with all of the women in offices if they let them. It was just craziness like that was going on, and it was really bad. And it's not. I mean, we've made strides and we've made improvements, but just until recently, when they moved prosecution of sexual assault cases outside of the purview of the military, women were still getting abused, meaning the they were the ones who would have to get transferred out instead of the person who raped them. They were the ones who was getting on dishonorable discharges. They were the ones who were getting exposed and treated like they were loose women, while the guys still walking around like nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? So we're making strides to make it a better process, but we still have a long way to go. Because if a woman says that she's been assaulted in the military, she goes through it. So I'm thankful that they made it so that if a woman is assaulted, the case is moved outside of the military's purview and somebody else is prosecuting the case, so we can get rid of a lot of the biases. But it's a struggle. A lot of women that are now out of the military are going back trying to get their other than honorable discharges reviewed and changed to honorable discharges, but it's a struggle. It's hard.
Mhm. Yeah, someone else actually mentioned how her experience with military sexual trauma, it was within the unit and they essentially protected the guy.
Mhm.
And she also mentioned how, and I think it was President Trump that made that not ruling or thing where it's not in the military. So anything that happens like with sexual assault, like it's going to the outside. So that is, you're right. That is something that was needed to be done. And it's something that we can move forward with. But you were talking about how, you were dealing with all of these emotions and then your brother passed away. Which I'm so sorry that all happened all at once. Like, how did you manage to still be strong and to keep moving forward? I know you said faith, you know, there's still a lot of those, you know, feelings that you still have to work through.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I cried every day. My mom, she was calling me. She was calling me every day. She would be on the phone and she would be praying for me, and I felt really guilty because she didn't know the whole story. She thought that I was just emotionally upset and hurt because my brother had passed, and I was, but it was a whole nother layer to that situation. And I was just distraught. And it was tearing me apart. So I would go to work, and when you have something else to distract you, it does help because it forces you to, even if you're just going through the motion, forces you to do something other than focus on your pain. And so you have to put one foot in front of the other. But your faith is your anchor because you know that God is going to hold you together. He's going to comfort you in the times when you have no clue as to how you're going to make it to the next day. And then you have to have people in your life that will stand in the gap for you. And so I had all of that was surrounding me. But then also, even though my brother was gone, I knew that that's not what he wanted for my life. And like I said, he was my hero because he had sickle cell anemia. And so many times throughout his life, I saw him rise above his illness. He would be sick, he would be in pain, but he would be laughing, he would be smiling. Even when he was in the hospital, he would be making us feel better. We was there for him, but he would be making us laugh, telling us jokes. And when he was out of the hospital, he would be doing everything and then some. Looking at him like, what? How are you? You know what I'm saying? So that motivated me to really pull myself together because if he could do that, I needed to find something within myself that would allow me to be able to rise above that. And that was the thing about family, because family is the most important thing to me. My dad and my mom, they gave us all these tools to help us to understand and to know that even when things don't look good, even when you're struggling between your faith, between family, you can make it happen. You can make it work. You can get through it. You can survive. And so no matter how it looks, I know that with my faith, with the love of my family, with the support of those who love me, I'm going to get through it. And so even when I was sitting there, crying at night saying, I can't be here. I can't do this. I just want I just want to leave and call it quits. That was never an option. And you have those moments when you just like, I can't do this. I need to go jump off this bridge, or I need to go take these pills. That is not the answer, because the pain that you leave behind for the people that love you is not worth it. So you have those thoughts, but you need to be able to rise above that to understand that that is not going to solve the issue. So dig deep, hold on to your faith, and take the next step. Because the best way that you can get back at the people who hurt you is to survive and triumph over what they did. You know what I'm saying? And so if crying every day is the answer, let the tears flow because it's going to heal you. And it took a long time because it took me 10 years before I could look at what happened and say, okay, now I'm ready to go talk to somebody, meaning I was ready to go talk to CID on the Navy base and hold them accountable. And you have to do it when you know you are ready. And that's okay because nobody can tell you when you're ready because it happened to you. It didn't happen to them. And that's what it's all about. It's about when you ready, when you know you can stand and do it for yourself. Don't do it for your mama. Don't do it for your kids. Do it for yourself because it's for your healing and for your benefit. And so that's what I did. But until then, I went to work every day. Some days I was at the chaplain's office crying. I know the chaplain would say, "Hey, get this tissue." You know, sometimes I was at my desk and I would be crying, but I had some great friends who really, stood in the gap for me. And I just took it one day at a time and I wasn't crying anymore. But my mom, she kept praying for me. She kept talking to me, even though she didn't know the whole story until I told her. And I told each one of my family members one at a time when I was ready. And the hardest person for me to tell was my dad because, he was my hero. I wanted to always be his perfect little princess. And when I told my dad, I thought he was going to be so disappointed. And he started crying, which totally shocked me. And he was like, I wish you would have told me earlier. And he was like, I could never be disappointed with you. And I'm so sorry, you went through that. But I'll always be here for you. And we cried together. And we got past that. And I was so glad that I told him before he passed, you know. And so after that, I had told everybody in my family, and I was ready to move into my future without any more weights on my shoulder. I had told myself, I said, when I can get up and say that I was assaulted out loud, then I know I'm not a victim anymore. And I reached that point and I could breathe again. You know what I'm saying? And I was ready to help other people. I was ready to move forward with my life. I was ready to find my healing. And it's still, I'm not going to say that I don't ever think about it. I'm not going to say that I don't never get angry about it because you're going to live with that for the rest of your day. But you're able to take the chains off. You're able to take the locks off. You're able to talk about it. And that's what you need to be able to do.
So for like the women who aren't ready to talk about it, but need to do that inner work, what are some things that you suggest, like for a woman who did go through a very similar situation?
I would tell them that if you can't talk about it with other people and write down what you're feeling, I definitely suggest therapy because that's going to be key. You need a therapist that's going to listen, that's going to hear you. You don't need a therapist that's going to be throwing stuff at you and trying to force you, but you need somebody that's really going to hear you. But you really need to be able to get your feelings out. Sometimes you can't talk to people about that. You can only talk to yourself. Because I couldn't talk to nobody, because those feelings of shame and guilt, and then you're trying to figure out well, what did I do? Was it something I said? Was it something I did? Well, was it something I was wearing? Because you try to figure out, not figure out how, especially when it's somebody that you know, in any of those circumstances, you like, what in the world? You just don't have any clues, and you drive yourself crazy trying to figure that out. And so if you can't figure it out, who nobody can help you but the person who actually assaulted you. So get you a journal and or however I don't write in a journal anymore, but I use my computer and just write down what you feel. Just write until you can't write anymore or until you are ready to go talk to somebody and then just start from there. Or you might have a friend that you really trust and you ready, you want to share that with them because it takes baby steps until you ready to take those big steps and then you can go from there. But the most important thing you need to understand is that it was not your fault and what happened to you does not define you. You are still worthy, you are still beautiful, and you still have a future that's waiting for you to walk into it.
I love that you're saying, like, your trauma doesn't define you because it seems like a lot of the women who have done that work to, manage their emotions with a situation like this have also said very similar, things. Like, it doesn't define you. And you can, when you're able to speak out on it and you don't know who's listening and it could change someone else's life. And you mentioned that you created a nonprofit, uh, to help with that. So how did it, you know, walk us through like that journey? Because you finally this happened to you, and then you were like, you know what, I'm gonna do something to help others. And then you created this nonprofit.
Well, I think the biggest thing that women, and it happens to men too, but my focus was on the woman and trust is a major factor, you know, because now we become hyper vigilant. We're always looking over our shoulders. We always want to make sure that we're safe. There are things that trigger us. And so people see, you walk into a place and, I need to sit with my back to the door because I want to know who is coming towards me because I don't need nobody sneaking up on me, tapping me on the shoulder. I don't know who it is. I don't need you in my circle because I don't know who you are. And, you're raised to believe that strangers are not safe. So you automatically have that thing, I'm not going to trust a stranger. But when the people who you're supposed to trust betray your trust, now you're like, well, who am I supposed to trust if I can't trust the people that I'm supposed to trust? Now everybody is off limits. So now you got to figure out who can I trust? So when that is now the status of your life, you can't even be safe in the house with family members, with friends. So you're isolated. You're constantly by yourself. And so you don't have people to talk to. You don't have people to hang out with. You just by yourself all the time. So you're lonely, you're depressed, dealing with anxiety, panic attacks. You need somebody that you can be with and feel safe, or you're going to sink into low levels of depression where you become suicidal or you driving yourself crazy. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not seeking counseling, you're going to be finding women like us in ditches, in houses, because who's checking on you? Because you're not talking to nobody. And so nobody knows to go check on you, to come see about you. So if there's a safe place where you can go and be with people who understand what you're dealing with, you don't have to be alone. You don't have to be lonely because now you can laugh again. You can have fun. You can socialize. You can hang out. You can start to feel better about yourself because when you say stuff like, girl, last night I have been up for the last 3, 4 days because I saw a movie, I saw a news clip, I saw whatever, and it triggered me, and I couldn't get back to sleep. I couldn't close my eyes because I was seeing things, I was hearing things. They understand. They know what you're dealing with. Or I went out with my family and I needed to sit in this certain seat, and they didn't understand, so they wouldn't move. So we got in an argument. I had to leave. You you like, girl, I understand exactly what you talking about. So you're there with like-minded people who understand what you're dealing with, and they can embrace you and help you walk through what you're dealing with. It's hard to find that when people don't know what you're dealing with or what you've been through. And then those same people who may have already been through that journey and like, I'm in a new place, I'm in a better place. Matter of fact, I have a new relationship. They can help you get to that same place because they can tell you what it took for them to get there.
So is your nonprofit, is it just like a brick and mortar that, these women go to, or do you guys have like an online community that you guys like set, people up face like
Well, it's it's kind of like both because we can do like online, we can do like face to face. It just depends, because some people they are like, okay, I need a moment to get to that place, or I just want to, Zoom because of COVID has become the norm, so it can be either or.
I love that because, especially like, with women in the military, we're spread all across the world, right? Like, and unfortunately, and I mentioned this in my first podcast, like this happens more than people think it does.
Right,
The whole sexual trauma, sexual harassment, sexual assault. And clearly, like if you served 40 years ago and people are still commenting on this, like it's still happening. Um, and you know, you're right. Like women need to have that safe space to, be able to talk about it. Um, because it is, you can, like you mentioned, get triggers. And, and I think one thing people don't really, think about is, you know, it could have happened 40 years ago, but that doesn't mean something's not going to re-trigger those emotions.
right.
And a lot of people sometimes are like, well, it happened 40 years ago. Why don't you get over it? Like, you should be over it by now. And it's, with PTSD and stuff like that, like, you don't, you learn how to manage it better. You don't necessarily get over it because certain things are, like I said, are going to re trigger.
It's always
And,
gonna be with you. It
mhm,
because you hear about it all the time when they talk about combat soldiers, they hear a loud cry, and now they're right back in those zones, especially when they're talking about World War II veterans, and nobody says, "Oh, they need to get over it." They like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that." But when you talk about sexual assault, they're like, "Oh, you're not over that yet? Okay, so what is the difference?" A trigger is a trigger. It's gonna bring you right back to that your situation regardless of what it is. They talk about it on the news. They demonstrating or situations like this is happening in movies. You read about situations in a magazine. It doesn't matter where the trigger comes from. It's going to take that person back to their situation. They're not, they're not in there looking for it. They're just going about their business, and all of a sudden, something about that particular scene, situation, news article, whatever it is, it reminds them of what happened to them, and now they're right back in it. Now, with treatment, with understanding, with, whatever they've been through or whatever tools that they've been provided with, whether it's CPT, ERMD, whatever they've gotten, they get better. But that memory is going to be with them. You know how they say, I forgive you, but I'm not going to forget. It's the same thing.
So say if like a woman did want to reach out to you with, your nonprofit, how could they get involved?
They can email me, they can call me, and I would be glad to give them information. We're in the process of updating the website. Matter of fact, I'm in the process of working with IBMF doing a position paper because one of the things that is we really want to improve is the mental health services that are being provided for women who dealt with military sexual trauma. Because the big thing is, if you're not being treated at the VA, or even if the VA sends you out into the civilian community, you could end up in a substance abuse group, or you could be seeing a physician who is not treating you for military sexual trauma, and you in there like, what? Which that is making your situation worse. So we want to ensure that if you have military sexual trauma, you're being treated by someone who understands what military sexual trauma. You're not in groups with men. You're not in substance abuse groups. None of that is taking places because here in Florida, there are not a lot of military sexual trauma treatment centers. And so they're sending you places where you're not getting the treatment that you need, and it is re-traumatizing our women. And so we really need Congress to do something about that all across the United States, not just in Florida, but all across the United States. Because if it's happening here, it's happening in other places. And it's important that we improve the mental health services for individuals who have dealt with or experienced military sexual trauma.
I didn't even know that was like a thing that they just like send you to almost like random groups, it sounds like.
Well, they send you to mental health service. They send you treatment for
Yeah.
mental health services. Now they're supposed to send you where you getting services treatment for military sexual trauma. Well, if you get there and of course they don't have those types of services, then they just put you in what they feel is the best place. Now, if the patient doesn't speak up, which a lot of times they too traumatized, it, the VA don't know, you know what I'm saying? So they just keep going. You know what I'm saying? But it's like that should not be the case. Before you go there, there should be a vetting process that says this facility has services geared to military sexual trauma so that we are not having situations like this occur. So if you say you can treat our veterans, you need to be able to treat our veterans so that they are not sitting here. And even if they don't end up in groups with men, they should not end up in groups where other women are talking about, their substance abuse or their other mental health issues that has nothing to do with sexual trauma. Because you don't want to be sitting up and hearing about their foster kids or their husband cheating. That is not why you are there. You know what I'm saying? So there has to be some type of screening process that is going to ensure the treatment that they need is the treatment that they are getting.
I didn't
Because
even realize that it was, that big of an issue. Like,
it is.
that wow. Like you're just like blowing my mind. So clearly we need to, set, these women up for success. So vetting is obviously something that we should probably the VA, like we as a country should start doing, right? the mental health aspect for sure. Oh, oh my gosh. Like, I just have like so many questions. Like, I just can't believe that someone would I'm just like mind blown to be completely honest. So, okay, so the woman is seeking help. We're trying to vet them. Like, is it common for a lot of VA places, or is it common for places to treat military sexual trauma, or is that something that we need to start creating more?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to all of the VA facilities, but I know that here in Florida, there are not a lot of military sexual trauma treatment facilities. We need because Florida is like the third largest population for veterans in Florida. So I think we got California. I know California is one. I want to say Texas and then Florida. So we have a large population of veterans in our state. So naturally, with that being the case, we need a lot of care and services. But we don't have a lot of facilities in Florida that provide military sexual trauma services for mental health. I want to say when I was doing research, I only saw maybe four, maybe four that was military sexual trauma specific. Now, there were other facilities that said that they provided some, now, multiple, of course, there were many that provided mental health services. And within that, they could probably make some type of attempt at providing, mental health services, but they're not specific for that. And so there's no benefit for that because you don't have the staff on board to treat those specific patients. So they're just in the mix. That's not a benefit because I know for me, I would want to go see you because how are you going to help me? I know more about what I need than you do. So I'm not going to listen, to you when you trying to tell me what I need. How you going to tell me what I need when you don't know as much as I do? That's not a benefit for me. So I'm totally going to tune you out. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm the patient. I'm telling you what I need. Or I'm
Mhm.
telling you, I'm giving you the statistics and you don't know the statistics. You see what I'm saying? So that's not a benefit to the patient. Because now the patient who is already having episodes is going to be more stressed. Anxiety is going to be a whole lot higher. You know what I'm saying? And so we're not accomplishing what we need to do. We got to improve our services, the care and treatment that's provided to our patients. So we got a lot of work that needs to be done.
So, for say women who do want to try to seek therapy, should they try just to get in, or should they try to specifically find someone who can, you know, help with the mental aspect of military sexual trauma? Because I know the whole system is kind of not blurred, but broad. And then I
Well,
know there's probably not enough
the VA
resources.
has military sexual trauma services within the VA. So they can go to the VA and receive military sexual trauma services at the VA. If they have private insurance, that also is an option. Now, I don't know how the private insurance carriers, I don't know how that works, but the VA does have military sexual trauma services. So you could go to the VA and ask them about their military sexual trauma services, and they will assign you to someone and put you into that service. So you can go directly to the VA and receive military sexual counseling services. So they do have that.
Okay, because I was always under the impression that, say, if you had, something to work through, you just go to the VA and say, hey, just want to talk to someone because someone else was telling me that the VA only allows like 6 or 12 counseling sessions.
No, you can get as much counseling as you need to. I mean, if you need help, you need services, because you know, you can your consults can be renewed. Say you go to the VA and you get a consult and the consult expires. Then you go back to your doctor and you say, my consult expired and I need a new one. And you know, if they feel like you need a new one, they'll give you a new one. So you can get a new consult. Because they'll look over the, notes from the doctor, whomever the doctor is that you're seeing, and if that doctor feels like you need to continue in, therapy, then they'll give you a new consult.
Okay, that's good to know because I know a lot of people they don't have a lot of faith in the VA system right now. So I know a lot of people just don't want to seek help because of the wait or all the hurdles that they have to go through, and they're like, "Well, it's just not worth it." So that's good to know that, like, there are specific sexual military trauma, help at the VA. So if anyone is experiencing, you know, trauma that they wanna work through, please reach out to the VA. Even if it's a bunch of hurdles, it'll be worth it, or reach out to Doctor Hall over here.
Oh, well, I would tell people that they need to be persistent when it comes to their care. You know, they have patient advocates that at the VA that, you know, if you feel like you're not getting what you need, go see your patient advocate. They have social workers to because, you know, don't give up because it's your, you know, it's your care and you have earned it. So don't give up because if you give up, then you're certainly not going to get what you need. So you like, this doctor is not working. I need a new doctor, you know, so do not give up. You know, you got to keep fighting for what you feel like you need and you deserve. So it's like that doctor is not hearing you. I need to speak to somebody higher. I need to speak to his boss. And you keep fighting, you know, but you can't win if you quit. That's what I always tell people. You can't win if you quit, you know, because you gonna see my face or you gonna get my note or somebody's gonna hear, you know, and speak to your congressman. That's what they there for. So if you can't get no response from the VA at all, find out who your congressman is and write a letter because you fought for your country and you need to get the service, the care, and the benefits you deserve.
Yes, and I think that, is kind of a big takeaway too, because I know a lot of women feel like, they only did only so many years that they don't deserve the care or whatever. And so one thing, I always tell people is like, you still served, you still
Exactly.
rose your hand, and those benefits
Are you
belong to you
up? So it
and
doesn't
use it.
matter how long you were in, you deserve those benefits because my brother was in the Marine Corps. He didn't finish his boot camp, but when he passed, he got his flag. So it doesn't matter if you signed your name on the dotted line, like you say, raise your hand. You still deserve your benefits, and whatever benefits those are, then you won't know what they are if you do not do the research to find out. Because I do know they have, uh, different. It's different for everybody based on how much time you served, but you have to do the research to figure out what your rights are and what your benefits are. You know, too many times and too often people give up at the first no. No, you don't have to take that no. You go find out for yourself and then go from there. So that's what we need to do. We have to fight for our rights. That's what they tell us.
Yes, I completely agree. So definitely always do your research because you'd be surprised like what benefits you do actually have.
Mhm.
And yeah, like if you know that you are entitled to something and someone tells you no, always reference whatever you find, because half the time I also notice is some people will just kind of steamroll you
Mhm.
or steamroll an individual because they're like, well, they probably didn't look it up. And the person who's steamrolling doesn't want to do the paperwork.
Right.
Well,
Exactly. So you like, okay, you said, I'm sorry, but when I looked at this, it said on such and such that I'm supposed to get oh, okay. Well, unless you can tell me something differently, this what I'm going with.
mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yep.
you
So,
need to do your homework and know what your rights are before you go and be prepared. That's what they say. Be prepared. Now, if you're not prepared, people gonna be telling you all kind of stuff, and you can be saying, "Oh, okay," and they be dead wrong because they can see. First of all, you're not confident, and you look like you could be told anything, and you gonna believe that. So I'd be like, "Is that what you said?" Because even if I leave the meeting not without fighting first. But then I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'm right now. Everything you say, I'm coming back because I'm gonna check on everything you said. Now you was lying, so let me say this right here. But you cannot take everything at face value because sometimes people don't give you all the details, and you might miss out on your benefits. So even if they said that this is what it is, you need to check because you are entitled to a second opinion.
yeah, completely agree. So, Dr. Hall, what are some last minute words of advice for anyone who's listening to this episode?
Um, what I would say is, in terms of women in the military, 40 years ago, things were a lot different. Today, we have so many more options. Um, if you are a woman in the military, get a mentor. We have so many outstanding women in the military, in leadership. So find you a strong woman leader and lean into that. Ask her questions, follow her command, and learn from her, grow from her. I always say that none of us get to where we are by ourselves. Somebody reached out to us and helped us when we were just starting out. So when you make it to where you are, reach back and help somebody else. So get you a mentor. And then when you make it, you reach back and you help somebody else. I will also say, uh, trust is good, but always be aware. Don't trust lightly. That goes for your friends, that goes for family members. Trust is always earned. It's not just given. You always have to be on guard. Wherever you go, always have someone with you and be aware of your surroundings at all times. I know in the military, alcohol, smoking is something that people just take for granted. They just do. But just because they just do, don't mean you have to do. If you are drinking and you put your drink down, call that drink gone and don't pick it back up because people are dropping things in drinks, they're dropping things in food, and you just can't come back and think that nobody has tampered with that drink. If God, uh, you are assaulted, and I pray that that doesn't happen to you. Report it. Okay. A lot of times, we let shame and guilt keep us from speaking up. But speak up, tell somebody, and then take it all the way, and then go through the steps to healing and processing, therapy, talking about it, you know, It doesn't define who you are. It could happen to anybody. It just happened to have happened to you. But grow from this and continue on with your future. You still have a full life and you can be anything that you want to be. You will be surprised at the people that has happened to you. If you look around and you see they have turned their life around and they are leaders of the world. It doesn't show on their face because they made the commitment that they would not let it take them down. They will rise above what happened to them. So at all times, we have to believe in ourselves and who we are. Lean into your faith and know that you can make it regardless of what it is. There are support networks and resources out there. Find out where they are in your area and reach out to them and get the help that you need. Operation Two Hearts and Minds are here. If you need our help, I'm here. I'm available. Brittany has my information, so please feel free to reach out to her and connect with me. I'm here. I'm available, and I am always praying for you. And even if you don't need me for that, I am a resource for leadership, for information, and for support and guidance. I hope that you've learned something from my conversation today, and I wish you the best.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hall. All of the links to get into contact with her, I will put in the show notes. So please reach out, even if it's not for military sexual trauma. She's obviously a very well-diverse individual, so she's a great person to connect with. Dr. Hall, thank you so much for taking the time
You're welcome.
and sharing your story. For anyone who is listening, thank you so much for listening. And then until next week, we will talk to you soon.